Welcome back to Energy Superheroes, the show where we profile the people shaping the future of power. Today we're joined by Margarita Patria, PhD economist, energy strategist, and LinkedIn standout. From data center load forecasts to utility risk management, she's at the cutting edge of where AI meets electricity. This is a deep dive into how our grid is evolving and who's paying for it.
Margarita Patria, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Peter.
I love your LinkedIn posts on data center load forecasts and as it relates to power generation. Tell us about your work.
Well, just a brief introduction. So my name is Margarita Patria, and I have a PhD in economics from Boston College. I have been in energy industry for over 15 years now, but who's counting? I work for Charles River Associates, that's a consulting company, and sometimes I teach at Northeastern University and teach energy economics. So the students keep me fresh.
That's awesome. That'll definitely keep you fresh.
Yes. It's nice to work with younger people and the questions that they ask. It does prepare for a lot of client meetings because the students just fire them up. So anyway, I've been working in the field of energy economics, as I said, for a while now. I've been doing forecasting, price forecasting, load forecasting for a while. I've been involved with energy procurement for utilities and other entities, hopefully more for large load like data centers, for example. We conduct clock auctions. We do RFPs for capacity procurement, all that sort of thing. Work with some utilities, work with a couple of ISOs, involved in many current issues. And as you know, the key topic of the day is data centers and how to incorporate them and how to plan for them. So we've been looking at the data center issue from different perspectives, helping utilities to look at that and how to accommodate that and what does it mean and what is this risk and so on, looking at the load forecast and how to incorporate data centers in a traditional load forecast, which is the key to utility planning, right? Load forecast. Tell me if I'm talking too fast.
No, it's perfect. And you bring up a number of really key points. Let's talk utility markets, and then let's go into ISO markets a little bit because they're completely different animals, I know. How are the utilities? We have FPL down here owned by Nextera. And of course, you have big utilities like Duke and Southern Company. How are those kinds of entities thinking about data centers and incorporating them into the load forecast?
Different utilities have different strategies. Well, at first it starts with the overall strategy. Like, do you want to attract data centers? Do you want to attract them with open arms like Energy has been doing? Or are you going to be a little more cautious? Do you want to include them in your rate base, or just like NIPSCO is thinking with their GenCo, do you want to try and separate because they do bring significant risk that is very hard to quantify?
I'm not familiar with that, NIPSCO and their GenCo. Let's double click on that and talk.
All right. It's in the works. So it's a filing and it's being discussed. So NIPSCO is suggesting to create a subsidiary, GenCo, that will deal with what they call mega loads, large loads, separately. So this GenCo would own the generation and a lot of gas, if you can imagine, right? They would own the generation and they will set the rates. And it's going to be separate from NIPSCO customer base as it is now.
That's a good idea. So I'd imagine they're trying to protect the ratepayers from potential rate increases as a result of large loads like data centers coming onto the grid.
Yes, exactly. And also protect from potential risk. It's still not uniformly accepted. So there are some opponents of this, and they're pointing out that this new entity may not be as heavily regulated. And can you really separate the risk? And, what about transmission? How is that going to be divided? So there are a lot of details to be ironed out, but it's an interesting development. And I do hope that it will go forward because it can provide a blueprint for the rest of the country.
It sounds like a great idea, and you bring up transmission. That, of course, is an issue. We're seeing that down in ERCOT after this year. They want to put a lot of the costs of transmission on the generators and on the developers as opposed to socializing all the costs. I imagine this is an attempt again to protect ratepayers from rising rates, because we always say ratepayers are voters, and we've got to make sure that they're taken care of. Otherwise, policymakers may have difficulty with continuity. So, and I think that's a nice way of saying, they might vote bums out, right?
Right.
If the rates go up too much. So it's definitely a consideration. So the NIPSCO GenCo situation, is that the only case you've seen of that, or are you seeing that in other markets as well?
I haven't looked too closely into that, so I cannot speak in that in greater detail, but I understand that Duke may be doing something similar. But I don't know the details. There is a desire overall to protect the rate base, as you say, the consumers, because, in energy industry, however you think about it, it's all comes down to end user. The end users are paying, and then this money, spread around the whole system. Some goes to transmission, some goes to generation, some goes to utilities, but the entities that are funding everything are end users.
For sure. Yeah, you got to take care of your users. So I know the data center guys understand that, because they, in essence, also provide a utility to their end users and have to deliver value. So speaking of data centers, that's the billion-dollar question. Are they going to be able to get the power they need to create as much AI as they want to, or do you see there being bottlenecks currently in the market?
There's definitely almost unlimited appetite for power currently. Whether or not there will be enough power is hard to say. It does depend on where the whole industry, the data center industry, ends up. As an economist, I think about it as, there is this demand for data center services, and there are different players that want to satisfy this demand. However, they do not coordinate their effort, and which inevitably is going to lead to over supply of data centers, probably, right? So it's very hard to say currently. We just don't know how much energy is going to be enough energy. I think we are approaching the limit of how much can be done in 1 year, in 2 years, in 3 years. There are definitely bottlenecks all across the board, the transmission and the supply chain. How much gas can we have? It's all limited amount. And usually, historically, how our society deals with it is through innovation. So I believe there will be some efficiency gains, and we do talk about it, and we do see it in data center industries. Like cooling, I read that it's about 35%. I saw different numbers, like what is the percentage of energy that goes into cooling? Let's say it's 35%, and there is enormous pressure to make it more efficient. And pressure is coming from a really well-funded entities. So it usually results in some kind of innovation. It's hard to speculate exactly what will come and what will happen, but I believe that efficiency gains are definitely going to happen.
For sure. Yeah, I always say whoever comes up with a more efficient chip that can process AI transactions more efficiently, that may be our first $1 trillion company. Because it's a big deal to be able to save. And of course, from the energy side, we want to be able to see growth as well, but we also could definitely benefit from efficiency, because it seems that data centers are outrunning the ability of at least generators from being able to meet the demand today. We talked in the opening a little about gas-fired generation, and data centers seem to have an appetite there. Why is it that data centers are moving and looking at gas generation so much?
Data centers are looking for something the energy that is reliable. they talk about 5 nines. That's 99.99% reliable. That's basically on all the time without any interruptions. And that really rules out intermittent generation. So we are talking about base load, and there should be not just one, but a couple of baseload generations to be able to provide this kind of reliability. Or, as you mentioned when we spoke earlier, you have to be connected to the grid. When there are a lot of generators and they're all connected, then this kind of reliability can be provided. So gas is something that can come online relatively quickly, and it can provide a lot of reliability.
Yeah.
And in certain areas of the country, it's easier to develop gas than in others. I live in New England, and we don't see a lot of that. And, you're in Florida, in Texas, we see a lot going on, a lot of new development.
We're excited about Texas, of course. What are you seeing as it relates to Texas and the ERCOT market? Is this an area that you've looked deeply at?
We looked at the load forecast. It was a while ago. It was right before the new administration came in, so things change. But still, and the ERCOT approach to load forecast has changed as well. But any way you look at it, they see explosive demand for energy. And at the same time, because of the rules of the market, we see a lot of investment in the market and a lot of development there as well. The only thing that can stop it is the supply chain. Just how many turbines can you buy in 1 year? Can you manufacture? So there definitely has to be a wait time for that. And we have seen that as well.
Well, for sure. Yeah, supply chain is challenging, and people don't realize there's only 3 gas turbine manufacturers that make really big ones, at least on a massive scale. So you've got GE, Vernova, you have Siemens Energy and Mitsubishi that can make the really large scale types of industrial gas turbines that could supply a gigawatt of power. And a lot of people bring up the question, why is this such a challenge now? We've been building data centers for so long. I always say, and you may have a different answer, but before they were building 50 megawatts here, 50 megawatts there, and there's many types of power supply that can provide that size. But when you get up to a gigawatt, it's very limited how you can get that much power that data centers want now. And it's a 20-fold increase over what they were doing just a few years ago.
Absolutely. I agree with that. It's not an easy thing to build something like this, to site it, to connect it. You have to have gas to power it. It's a difficult project to put together, that's for sure. And yeah, there cannot be that many of them in a given year. You reach a constraint. There is a limit.
Yeah, for sure. Now, other than data centers, do you guys consult with others that are looking for power generation or looking for, other industrial type customers, or what else are you doing in your practice there at CRA?
We definitely hyperscalers, data centers are the key player, currently the most vocal, and they're the most well-funded, and we are consultants.
Yeah. Absolutely. So you gotta go where the money is. I don't blame you.
We also work with utilities because at the end of the day, utilities have the mandate to keep the lights on, and it's your local utility that you will run to if something goes wrong. So utilities concerned with reliability and affordability as well. And as you know, some government officials are jumping in and trying to see what's going on. Because in this energy space, now we have this set of new players, data centers, that are thirsty for power and then can pay a lot for it. But there are still the rest of us, and we need energy as well. So the utilities and the regulators want to make sure that there is still power for regular consumers, right? And at least in PJM, where we have a lot of clients, there is some concern that there is not enough baseload generation, that we want to encourage gas to come online. And the PJM, with their fast track, they will attract more natural gas development, but we don't want it all to go to data centers, right? Because we need some as well.
It's a tough one. And you bring up PJM. We've looked a lot at that market, and so far we've stayed away as a developer. The main reason being the grid connection process in PJM, and I'm no expert in it because we're mostly working in ERCOT. But what we've been told and what we hear is that you go in and apply for a grid connection. You're not sure how long it will take. You're not sure how much it will cost as a developer. That uncertainty makes it very difficult to move forward and fund the early stage development expenses, because you know that maybe the project is going to take 7 years or 8 years, and there's going to be $100 or $200 million of grid upgrades that are required, and you don't really know. And so I feel like this interconnection reform within PJM, and maybe even some market reform, will be needed in order to encourage the type of development that I think they want. Of course, the fast track program was helpful in some ways.
It was helpful, and it will, and it's not just in PJM. All the markets are thinking about how to get generation online faster. It is a recognized problem, and we did look at that on behalf of one of the ISOs. It's a challenging problem, because there is a lot of, so as you said, the wait times are really long for generation to come online. So what happens with that the generation developers are going to submit a request to get into the line as soon as possible before even firming up their plans. So that's what we call speculative request, right? That's their strategy. Let's just put it in the line and we can figure it out later. So that makes the line inflate, right?
Extra long.
Extra long. That's right. So one of the suggestions is, okay, so let them pay a fee. Let them put down payment as much as possible, really, to make sure that when you put something in the interconnection queue, you really mean it and you are not likely to withhold. That helped somewhat. I think that helps somewhat, but not to the degree that we all wanted. And then, so we have all this still speculative projects in the interconnection queue, or projects that we know may leave interconnection queue. But still, ISOs, when they do their analysis, right, they do it with all these projects in the queue. So the analysis comes up with very large numbers. And there is a lot of uncertainty about, like, how much will it cost to connect?
And then people want to wait. I always thought if there was a way to, early in the process, figure out what the grid upgrades would be at that site, maybe you put in a fee, but you can figure out what those upgrades will cost. That can quickly allow a developer to decide, should we put it here, or should we maybe be looking at another site?
That's true. That's from individual developer perspective. But then imagine there are 10 other people that are also thinking the same thing, and they're looking to do the same thing. Then it becomes really tricky, because an ISO will have 10 requests to connect at that site, and that would make a connection so much more expensive. So which one of those 10 is going to stay? That's not clear.
It's a tough one.
It's
In
a
this
tough one.
way, I think, in many ways, regulated utilities are better able to handle this, because they can look at a long-term forecast and they can just upgrade the power lines. We have FPL here in Florida.
Yeah.
They do some type of analysis and they just go upgrade the power lines, and they are in coordination with the generation side of the business, which is the same business, the power lines and the generation. So they can kind of know, okay, based on our forecast, we need to put generation over here. We need to upgrade the power lines over here. And it happens much more methodically, as opposed to, dozens of entities sort of putting in requests and then wanting to take the cost of those upgrades and put it on the generator.
I agree.
It's very difficult.
It is. There are some there are things that ISOs are doing. They're building this transmission highways, right? Like MISO Tranche 1, Tranche 2. And that's the whole idea. Let's build this transmission highway, and this will enable interconnection and make it that much faster.
That's a great idea. I love this phrase, transmission highways. You really do need it. It's kind of like with the internet. When we first got on the internet, you're probably too young to remember, but AOL, it was very slow, right? And it took forever. But then they built out the fiber networks everywhere. And that's what enabled all the applications that we have today, like what we're doing right here, would have been
Yeah.
impossible in the early days of the internet.
Yeah, it's definitely a solvable problem, but solution is yet to be. It's not going to be universal. There are tweaks there. Um,
Tweaks have to be done.
Yes, another idea is to maybe not look at the big system as a whole, but start investigating areas and zones that can be better. I think that's happening in California, although I did not look at that market too closely. But I believe in terms of interconnection, they are one of the leaders in how to get it done and have it done quickly behind Texas.
Yeah, I'm Texas. Yep. Texas just tries to get things done. We had a great experience in Texas.
Yeah.
So we do enjoy it. I see behind you, it's a beautiful day there. You're in Boston,
I am.
as we talked about. And is CRA, are they headquartered in Boston? Is that where your headquarters is?
Yes. I'm in Hancock Tower now on Copley Square. And this is where our headquarters are located. We're on 9th floor, not too high, but still pretty nice view.
And how many people are at CRA?
We have different practice areas, so I don't know about the whole of CRA. Maybe 1,000 consultants. I'm not sure. I should know this by heart, but I don't. I know
It's a good sized company, and you guys focus. I know you focus heavily in the power space. So anybody out there that's a data center company, a hyperscaler that's looking for help in this area, I can speak from experience as a power guy. The data guys need help, and vice versa. The power guys need help. And so it really takes a consultant that understands both sides of the business to be able to connect those two to get them to speak the same language and be able to work together. What's the best way for people to get in touch with you, Margarita, if they want to reach out?
if they want to reach out, you can find me on LinkedIn, Margarita Patria, or they can send me an email at mpatria@crai.com. Just, if you Google my name, you'll see me. I'll connect with you on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to chat about whatever is on your mind.
And I can say Margarita is a great follow on LinkedIn because that's actually how we got in touch. Is she does some really nice posts about economics and analysis of data center load and power generation. So it's definitely a good follow on LinkedIn. I highly recommend for some free information because consultants normally are not giving away too much for free, but she gives great information on there, which positions her as an expert in the industry. So I'm sure that gets paid off by inbound customers, reading her LinkedIn feed. I've had a great experience with LinkedIn personally, and I recommend it.
Thank you. Thank you. That's nice to hear.
Margarita, it's been great having you on Energy Superheroes, and we look forward to following your work in the future. Thanks for being on.
Thank you for having me. Really enjoyed our conversation.